Hello, all of my history-loving friends. Welcome to the world of Madame Morbid. I am your guide on any number of historical adventures. If you like what you see here, please like this video and please subscribe to my channel. If you like my work, that's the best way to support me and it doesn't cost a thing. I am standing right now in Stringtown, Oklahoma. This is another Bonnie and Clyde location that a law officer lost his life and another was extremely gravely wounded. It's hard to tell now, but on this site was an outdoor dance venue that would have sat somewhere along here. It was said to have been about 50 feet off of the highway, which I apologize for the noise of that. It's extremely loud traffic noise. To give you a little bit of context of what had been happening with Clyde at this point, Bonnie had only experimented a little bit in taking part in the gang. She is not here at Stringtown. She has just gotten out of jail, actually, because he got her arrested in Kaufman. She has told her mother she wants nothing to do with Clyde. It's over, but she is secretly still seeing him. She's basically lying through her teeth to her mother. Clyde has been accused of murder for the first time. He did not actually kill the person in question. He was in the car. This was a robbery gone wrong in Hillsboro. His two companions went inside. Clyde did not, because Mr. J. Butcher, who owned the business, would have recognized Clyde. So he was in the getaway car. Something happened. Mr. Butcher went for a gun and allegedly got killed. So Clyde is on the run. He is wanted for murder. At this time, he is with Raymond Hamilton. Raymond Hamilton has actually been fingered as the shooter by Mrs. Butcher. Raymond was nowhere near. Hamilton was in Michigan working. Yet she picked him out of a lineup, and now he's wanted for this murder too. So when Raymond comes home and is surprised to find out, I'm wanted for murder? Yeah, sorry man, sorry about that. Clyde feels kind of bad about it. He's like, no one should ever go to prison for something they didn't do. So he has vowed to, if anything ever happens to Raymond or he goes to jail, he's gonna break him out. But at this point, Raymond just joins the gang again. He's like, well, I'm wanted for murder anyway. It's not like I can go straight. So they've been pulling off these various jobs, and right before Stringtown, they rob a business of its payroll. Dyer was also recruited to be with them to help with the getaway car. After this holdup, they come back to Eagle Ford Road. They pick up Bonnie, who's staying there with his parents. They hold up in a farmhouse and let a little time go by to let the heat get off of them a little bit, and then they take Bonnie back and she takes a taxi to stay with her mother. And the guys think this is a great time for us to just chill and have some fun, to let off some steam. It's been about 3 months since the Butcher murder, and Clyde's feeling pretty good. He's feeling a little safe. Texas has been pretty hot, so let's go to Oklahoma for a little while. They steal a car, they drop Bonnie off, and around 9:30 they pull in here to Stringtown, Oklahoma, and they see this dance going on. The dance floor was probably somewhere around in here where I'm standing. It was a completely outdoor venue. It was basically a raised platform, 40 feet by 40 feet in diameter. It had a railing around the edge with a little entrance gate where you could pay 10 cents to come up and dance. I feel like probably maybe all of this was involved that night. There were probably cars parked all through here, and I actually don't even know if the dance floor was here or maybe it was over here. There were 2 musicians playing that night. Normally it was a 4-person band, But 2 guys couldn't make it that night. There was one playing the fiddle and one playing the guitar. Duke Ellis. Duke Ellis was kind of the head of the band, and they were being paid by Pass the Hat. The guys pull in and they parked behind the band. Now the bandstand was uncovered except for a pavilion area over the band, and they parked back behind them. Duke Ellis, he saw them, like everybody noticed them. They pull up in this shiny Ford V8 and they are dressed to the nines in fedoras and nice suits. Everybody else, they're foreign overalls. These guys stand out like a sore thumb. And a lot of people are drinking. Yes, it's prohibition. Yes, it's illegal. But the sheriff really doesn't care. He says, I'm just gonna let him let off some steam. I know everybody drinks. I'm not gonna bother with it. But he's there that night largely because his deputy has bought a new car. And Sheriff Maxwell said, I largely came that night because I wanted a ride in his fancy new car. Dyer is the only one not wanted for murder. And so when they pull up behind the dance floor and they are trying not to get blocked in, they will go one at a time to go dance. And Dyer really wanted to do that. And they said, yeah, I think that's fine. You know, no, you're not wanted for anything. Just go have some fun. And they would take turns one at a time, and the other 2 would stay in the car and make sure it didn't get blocked in by more people coming to join the dance. So because of this, they were moving the car a lot, and this drew the sheriff's attention. Maxwell, and it's Eugene Moore, his deputy. Eugene Moore was a farmer. He came from a very well-off family, actually very wealthy. His grandfather was wealthy, but he had lost everything in the crash of '29. So unfortunately, it had been necessary for Eugene Moore to take this deputy position. People were doing this. Law enforcement in these areas were people with pretty much no training. They had to furnish their own car, their own weapons. A lot of them were not wealthy, so they didn't have very powerful weapons. They were often cheap, and this position should not have been dangerous. We're talking about, we're going to be arresting moonshiners or people who had too much to drink. We're not going to be dealing with Bonnie and Clyde. They don't see this coming at all. What starts to happen is as these dandies are coming up in with their fancy clothes and fancy car, it's making the local men angry. And since a lot of them have been drinking, the sheriff starts to get concerned that there's going to be violence, or the locals are going to go after these guys and start a problem. So he gets this idea, well, these guys are drinking too, but they're not doing anything wrong any more than anyone else at the dance. But the sheriff decides he's going to arrest them, and he has absolutely no idea what he's walking into. Maxwell is walking up toward the car. Dyer is on the dance floor dancing. And the musician says what song he started to play right before this all started. Maxwell walks up to their car door and he leans over and he puts his arm on the door to speak to them. And before he has hardly even had the words, "You boys are under arrest," out of his mouth, they start blowing him away. And Clyde will say there was a 50-50 shot between who it was that shot him, between him and Raymond Hamilton. He says they were both firing. The sheriff is hit at least 6 times, if not 7. Ellis, he said he didn't actually see him shot initially. It was the sound that drew him, and he went and he looked, and he said it seemed to take the sheriff forever to fall. But he's not dead. Miraculously, everyone who saw it happen seemed to think that he must have died instantly, but he did not. As Clyde guns it immediately to peel out, and the sheriff starts shooting it. Clyde used to practice driving, and he would do these fancy maneuvers But again, there's cars everywhere, and this really caught him off guard. It's possible he may have had a little bit to drink, probably not a whole lot if he had. He was stupid about a lot of things, but not drinking so that he could keep his head if something happened was not one of them. He was actually very smart when it came to that. He would not drink in case something like this happened and he could get them out of there and he could keep his head. But as he's trying to get away, he accidentally runs into a culvert and the car actually completely tips over, kind of dumping them all to the side. And they have to get down, and there is a gun battle. I'm trying to see, there's a kind of a ditch over here. And if they parked behind the venue, it could have been this little ditch over here that they turned the car over in. I am completely speculating here because I actually have no idea how this area has changed. I imagine it has changed a lot. I don't even know if this road was here at that time. Because the car is turned over, all of the weapons and the ammunition, it's all just kind of scattered around in the bottom. So the guys are just reaching into this turned over car and they're trying to get a hold of the ammunition they need to fight this fight, and they take refuge behind it, and they're having a firefight with any law enforcement left here. Eugene Moore, he's sitting in his car when this all starts. He gets out and he kind of shelters behind it and he starts shooting at the bandits. But Clyde sees him as Moore is aiming for Clyde, and Clyde takes him out with his double-barreled shotgun first. And Moore dies instantly. Everybody saw this happen and said, I knew that Eugene Moore was dead the moment I saw this happen. He said, I think I must have been the last person to see him alive. It's absolute bedlam. People are diving off of the stage. They're trying to take shelter. Everyone is screaming. They're diving for cover. More than likely, Clyde was a killer, yeah. But he wasn't going to kill people unless he had to. So him and Raymond, I don't know where all the lights would have been, but they start shooting out any lights above them to try to make everything dark, to hide themselves. So they're shooting out the light bulbs, and the glass is flying, and that is frightening people. They were probably firing over people's heads, not wanting to hurt anybody, but to cause confusion, to cause this bedlam, so that maybe they could get away. Milligan, or Ross Dyer, he was dancing when this happened, and he just kind of disappeared into the crowd, took a bus back to Texas where he was captured, and he is the one who started naming the names and saying, I didn't kill anybody, I was just there, but this is who did it, and I don't, if I'm in jail, they can't come after me. So it doesn't take long for Hamilton and Clyde to be wanted for this. Eventually, they are able to kind of slip away. I hear the train right up over this direction, and they headed that way. They were able to find like a viaduct or something that went under the train tracks. They headed that way, and they stole a car and were able to escape that way. However, only a few miles outside of town, that car broke down because whoever owned it didn't maintain it. And it actually was so bad that they had never taken care of the tires that they couldn't even get the tire off. And so they came up to this home and they told the people that lived there that they had had an accident. Clyde had this sob story about how his wife was hurt. He needed to borrow their car to go get help. Could he please do that? Could they please help him? Well, it was a farm couple with a son, a teenage son named Haskell, and the wife said she drove the car, or her son. Her husband didn't drive, but she said that story was so pathetic and sad that they just felt like they had to help. And so she volunteered to let her son drive the car for them back to the car to get his wife and then get her to help. So as soon as the son starts walking toward the car, Clyde puts a gun in his back and says, don't say anything, just get in the car, don't act like everything is fine. And he kidnaps her son. The mom, of course, sees them going the opposite direction, and he hollers to her and says, it's okay, ma'am, we're gonna go get the doctor and bring the doctor back. That's why we're not going the direction you think we're going. But she knows something's wrong, and her husband tells her, oh, don't worry about it, you're always like this. You always think the worst is gonna happen. Well, she was totally right. They drive that car until it runs out of gas. And they said it was actually really convenient because Haskell was a mail carrier. He knew the back roads like the back of his hand. Well, when they ran out of gas, as they try to flag down another car, a salesman, I think, to try to take his car, Haskell runs. And Clyde's like, come on, kid, we're not gonna hurt you. Come on back, come on. Well, the kid's gone. And he's like, okay, fine. Finally, they get a car that will get them away, and they are able to get away safe and go get Bonnie. This was an epic disaster. When they go to check on the sheriff, everyone expects him to be dead, but he's not. And he's been absolutely shot to pieces, and he is bleeding profusely. They get him up and they get him back to someone's house, and they get him on a bed, and he's bleeding so bad that it soaks all the way into the mattress and is dripping onto the floor. It's really amazing that he survived this, but he did. And of course, when everybody checked on Moore, he was gone. I mean, he had died probably before he even hit the ground. What are some mistakes Clyde made? Number one, thinking he was safe. Number two, dressing so out of place. Sticking out. Wear overalls like everybody else. No one's gonna notice a thing. Number three, acting weird. Continually moving the car. Only coming out one guy at a time to go dance. They were aggravating the locals. And the law just wanted to keep people from getting mad and starting something with these guys who were out there flirting with their girls. Most of the time, it seems to me, Clyde gets caught by acting suspiciously. You know, they would hide out in places, they would cover the windows with newspaper, they would be super secretive, they would only send Blanche out for food, and people noticed this. Always having these different cars, fancy cars. He just acted super suspicious. If he had acted like everything was fine, it wouldn't have drawn the attention that got him caught so many times by acting weird. People notice. Eugene Moore is the first officer to die at the hands of Clyde, and there will be 8 more after him, sadly. I've covered at least 3 of them previously. Joplin and Commerce, Oklahoma. Oh, I've done Grapevine too. So I've covered 6 of them. 2, 4. Yeah, I've covered 6 of the 8 now on site for, well, no, not Grapevine. We'll be near Grapevine. I don't think it's very accessible though. There's a monument like here, but I think it's hard to get to, and it's probably noisier than this is.